It was supposed to be a night of power and spectacle. The annual Hope For Humanity Gala, where LA's elite paraded influence and luxury like medals of war. The cameras flashed, the whispers swirled. And at the center of it all stood Mason Lane, tech entrepreneur turned tabloid obsession, flaunting his new assistant turned mistress on his arm like a trophy. But what the press didn't expect was his pregnant ex-wife walking in an hour later, dressed in black velvet, chin high, and escorted by one of his biggest business rivals. That was the moment everything changed. But months before that public reckoning, Harper Lane Montgomery's life was still being pulled between fear and fragile hope. Pregnant, newly married to billionaire CEO Sebastian Montgomery, and living in a fortress-like penthouse in Los Angeles, Harper should have felt safe. But she wasn't. Not yet. Behind her calm, glowing exterior was a woman being hunted by the past. Harper had been just 25 when she first married Mason Lane, a charming childhood friend from Bend, Oregon. He was the hometown golden boy, friendly, admired, and dangerously good at hiding what lurked underneath. The first time he raised his voice, she thought it was stress. The second time, she wore a turtleneck in June. By the time she realized his control had turned into something darker, she was already drowning in excuses and isolation. She filed for divorce, requested a restraining order, and started over, scarred but standing. She moved to San Diego, took a marketing job, and tried to reclaim her voice. It was at a tech summit in Los Angeles that she met Sebastian Montgomery, billionaire, CEO, and entirely unlike Mason in every way. Where Mason was volatile, Sebastian was composed. Where Mason manipulated, Sebastian listened. Over a series of meetings and quiet conversations, something gentle and healing bloomed. He was intrigued by her marketing insight. She was disarmed by his steadiness. What started as professional grew into personal, and eventually, Harper found herself feeling something foreign. Safe. Their bond deepened as her company relocated to LA. Slowly, cautiously, she let herself fall. By the time he proposed, Harper didn't just say yes. She believed it. She believed that maybe, just maybe, she had escaped. But danger doesn't knock, it waits. And just when Harper felt settled in her new life, a doting husband, a baby on the way, the shadows of Mason Lane reemerged. What started as whispers became messages. What once was paranoia became proof. And that's where her new life, her new love would be tested. Because Mason wasn't just watching, he was planning. His protective instincts flared when he caught glimpses of her anxiety. Eventually, Harper opened up to Sebastian about Mason's controlling behavior and the intimidation she had endured. Though Mason had been silent for a time, she couldn't shake the lingering sense of dread. Sebastian, moved by her vulnerability, made a solemn vow. She would never have to face fear alone again. They were married in a small yet elegant ceremony held in the Montgomery family's private garden estate just outside Malibu. Guests included select philanthropic partners, a few trusted business allies, and Harper's closest circle, like her longtime friend Kayla Simmons, who had witnessed the unraveling of her previous marriage firsthand. With a soft shimmer in her eyes, Harper believed she was finally free from Mason's grip. Married for barely 8 months, Harper and Sebastian received miraculous news. She was pregnant. Overjoyed, Sebastian enveloped her in added care, shielding her from any stress his global ventures might bring. For Harper, it felt like a dream she had once feared she'd never experience. A devoted partner and a baby on the way. But a ghost from her past was about to reappear. The first sign came in the form of a chilling voicemail from an unknown number. Mason Lane's voice, thick with bitterness, demanding she speak to him immediately. Harper's heart pounded. She hoped it was an isolated moment, a mistake, a one-off. But little did she know, it was the beginning of a dark new chapter that would threaten her peace, her marriage, and the life growing inside her. Fresh from an appointment with her obstetrician, Harper was still buoyed by the rhythmic sound of her baby's heartbeat echoing in her memory. She clutched the ultrasound photo, a treasured first image of the child she already loved. Sebastian, caught in a critical international conference call, had missed the appointment but had apologized profusely, promising to be there for the next one. Stepping out onto the lively streets of downtown Los Angeles, Harper tried to hail a cab amid the usual chorus of screeching tires, honking horns, and tourists marveling at the skyscrapers. Then a chill traced down her spine. Across the street, she spotted a familiar figure, tall, rigid, clad in a dark hoodie. His stance was unmistakably tense. Before she could confirm what her instincts screamed, a delivery truck rolled past, blocking her view. When it cleared, the figure had vanished. Her mind reeled. Was it Mason? Could he have really followed her to LA? She tried to convince herself it was just paranoia. After all, his last known location was in Sacramento, over 5 hours away. Still, the feeling of unease wouldn't leave. The next day, Harper returned home to find a small card slid under her apartment door. It held no message, only 6 words scrawled in rough print. "I know where you live now." Panic surged through her. She wanted to tell Sebastian, but he was en route to Tokyo for a vital business summit. Harper hated the idea of weighing him down, especially when his international negotiations were so delicately poised. Instead, she turned to Kayla Simmons, who had recently relocated to Los Angeles for her own marketing role. Kayla, alarmed by the note, insisted that Harper contact the police immediately. Officer Daniel Reyes, a broad-shouldered detective from the local precinct, took her statement with a professional calm. Harper explained her ex-husband's history, his threats, his emotional abuse. Detective Reyes listened carefully as he filed the report, but cautioned that without direct evidence, their hands were largely tied beyond initiating a protective watch. He advised her to stay alert and document any further attempts at contact. Back at Montgomery Tower, Sebastian's sleek headquarters, Harper did her best to focus on her branding projects, but every time her phone buzzed, dread clawed at her chest. Each ring felt like a threat until it turned out to be nothing more than a colleague or a telemarketer. She ached for Sebastian's steady presence. A flicker of relief arrived when he called late one evening from his hotel suite in Tokyo. Hearing his calm voice, Harper nearly told him everything. But she stopped herself, afraid to derail the major deals he was about to close that weekend. She retreated to the Montgomery penthouse. Its contemporary lines, panoramic views of the Pacific, and state-of-the-art security should have felt like a haven. Yet as she sorted through the day's mail, her breath caught. There was a plain envelope, no return address. Inside, a single line scrawled in uneven handwriting. "Remember me, Harper." A wave of nausea rolled through her. Her ex-husband was haunting her again, invading even the places she thought were safe. She texted Kayla, hands trembling. Could she keep pretending this wasn't happening? Could she hope Mason would fade into the background? Or did she need to come clean to Sebastian and risk disrupting his delicate negotiations abroad? She hesitated. But deep down, she knew time was running out. Every passing day, Mason inched closer. The danger grew, and the secrets she kept could unravel everything. By Monday morning, Harper realized she had to confide in someone with true authority. Kayla's support was steady, but her reach was limited. The police were constrained by the law. So in a moment, driven by desperation, Harper reached out to Juliet Cross, Sebastian's chief of security. Juliet, a no-nonsense former federal agent, was legendary for her cool head and unwavering loyalty to the Montgomery family. Unflinching loyalty to the Montgomery family. They met in a secure corner suite at Montgomery Tower, where Harper laid out everything: the strange sightings, the ominous letters, the threatening voicemail. Juliet listened with laser focus. Her hawk-like stare never flickered. She asked direct, no-nonsense questions. Had Mason physically confronted her? Did she have any concrete evidence? But Harper had little more than cryptic notes and fleeting glimpses. Still, Juliet promised they would ramp up security around the penthouse and closely monitor any suspicious activity near the building. That evening, as Harper sat at home scrolling through campaign proposals, her phone lit up with an unknown number. Her heartbeat quickened. She picked up. Silence. Then came a breath. A low, deliberate inhale, followed by Mason's chilling voice. "You think you're safe in your billionaire tower? You owe me a conversation, Harper. Stop pretending I don't exist, or I'll come find you myself." The line went dead. Her phone slipped from her fingers as tears welled up. Enough was enough. She grabbed her phone, ready to text Sebastian in Tokyo. But just as she finished typing the first few words, a call from him came through. She answered, masking the tremor in her voice. He was jubilant, excited about the contract he'd just signed. He spoke of how this expansion would elevate Montgomery Dynamics' global reach. Harper smiled through her fear, offering encouragement. swallowing her panic to avoid spoiling his well-earned triumph. He told her he missed her deeply and would be back in 3 days. She murmured that she missed him too, though behind her words was a mounting terror. That night, Harper tossed and turned in bed. Each subtle kick from the baby within reminded her that she had more than herself to protect now. Her mind spiraled back to the aftermath of her divorce, how she once believed Mason's grip had been broken. She remembered their last argument, the accusations Mason hurled, claiming she owed him something, even after their marriage crumbled. She recalled him shattering a framed photo in a fury, the shards glittering on the floor, remnants of something she'd once called love. Could that rage have turned into a full-blown vendetta? By morning, Kayla pleaded with Harper to come stay at her place for a few days, but Harper declined. The Montgomery penthouse, armed with multiple layers of security, still felt safer. Later that afternoon, Juliet informed her that surveillance footage from the building had captured a hooded man loitering near the lobby entrance 2 days prior. Though they couldn't confirm his identity, the figure's stature and movements chilled Harper's blood. She knew she couldn't keep delaying the inevitable. Sebastian had the resources to help, and pretending the threat didn't exist was no longer a viable option. Just as she was bracing herself to tell him during a video call, another letter was slid under her penthouse door. This one bore a crude drawing of a pregnant woman with a slash across her belly. Beneath it, in jagged handwriting, were the words, "Talk or I'll do worse." Harper's entire body trembled. Her ex-husband had crossed a chilling line. He had fully spiraled into darkness. Just then, the elevator chimed. Juliet stepped out, her expression severe. "There's something you need to see, Mrs. Montgomery," she said, her voice tight with urgency. Harper instantly knew. The situation had escalated far beyond cryptic threats. Fear spiked in her veins. If Mason was truly this unhinged, then everything, her safety, her baby's future, and the delicate hope she'd built with Sebastian, was at risk. Juliet led Harper down to a secured room on the lower level of the penthouse, usually reserved for confidential negotiations. On a large monitor, a surveillance video played on a loop. It was nighttime footage from a street-facing security camera across the road. A hooded figure approached the front door. He tried the handle, locked. Then he turned, looked straight at the lens, and lifted his hood. Mason Lane. His face, unmistakable, twisted in a sneer. He mouthed something, words the camera couldn't capture, then melted into the shadows. Goosebumps rose along Harper's arms. It was undeniable now. Mason had found her. He wasn't just threatening from afar. He was physically invading her new life. Juliet froze the video, her jaw clenched. "He's escalating," she said flatly. "I'll have our legal team send this to the LAPD immediately. But I strongly suggest we inform Mr. Montgomery now." Harper's thoughts raced. Her eyes fixed on the paused image, Mason's once charming gaze now blazing with warped resentment. She remembered how he used to pin her wrist when she disagreed with him, how he'd deliberately interfere with her job opportunities out of possessiveness. She had believed those memories were part of a closed chapter. But now they surged back, sharper than ever. She took a shaky breath and nodded. "Set up the call," she told Juliet. Sebastian was still in Tokyo, but time zones be damned, this couldn't wait. Within the hour, the secure line connected. His deep, steady voice filtered through the speaker. "Harper," Juliet said, "it's urgent. Are you all right?" Her composure cracked. "No," she whispered, her voice quivering. "I'm not. I'm so sorry to bring this on you right now, but Mason's back. He's been following me, leaving threats. We have security footage. He was right outside our building." A stunned silence fell. Then Sebastian's tone shifted, anger rippling just beneath the surface. "He threatened you again? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She swallowed hard. "I was afraid to worry you. Your negotiations were so important." Sebastian's voice softened, threaded with concern, but beneath that softness was something more. Hurt. The kind that comes from loving someone so deeply, it bruises when they carry burdens alone. "You and our baby come first. Always. I'm on the next flight home." He turned sharp. "Juliet, tighten security. Keep Harper inside unless absolutely necessary. And have legal start working on a restraining order immediately if possible." Tears welled in Harper's eyes, relief mixing with guilt. She hated the feeling that her silence had left him blindsided. She ended the call with a quiet promise. They'd see each other soon. Juliet swiftly ushered her into a newly fortified routine. 2 discreet bodyguards assigned to her, a secured private elevator system, and 24-hour monitoring. That evening, Kayla dropped by with a bag of groceries and comfort essentials. They shared dinner in the penthouse lounge, trying to distract themselves with light-hearted movies. But Harper couldn't laugh. Not fully. Her smile always came a beat too late, eyes flickering toward the hallway. Each time the elevator chimed or her phone buzzed, Harper jumped. The anxiety was unrelenting. Kayla did her best to soothe her, insisting Mason would end up behind bars if he dared push any further. But Mason's greatest weapon had always been his unpredictability. He thrived on intimidation, on making her feel like she was never truly safe. That kind of fear didn't shout, it whispered, crept into her bones and settled there. The following morning, a private investigator retained by Montgomery's legal team reported back with grim findings. Mason had no permanent address. He was drifting from one budget motel to another across the outskirts of Los Angeles, paying cash, leaving no digital trail. The idea that he could appear at any moment hung over Harper like a storm cloud. She paced the penthouse, one hand instinctively on her belly as the baby shifted. Every movement reminded her what she was fighting for, and what she might lose if she underestimated him. She longed for Sebastian's arms around her, for the stillness he brought. But until he arrived, Mason's threat festered in her thoughts. Then, just before dawn, after a night of broken sleep, the penthouse door burst open. Sebastian rushed inside. His hair was tousled, his eyes bloodshot from travel, but filled with intense worry. Without saying a word, he pulled Harper into his arms and exhaled a breath he'd been holding for too long. He clutched her like she was the only truth in a world that had been unraveling. In his embrace, the cold shell of the penthouse seemed to melt away, replaced by something warm and solid. But both of them knew the fight wasn't over. Not yet. With Sebastian home, the dynamic shifted instantly. He moved fast. A formal complaint was filed, now backed by the surveillance footage. The Montgomery legal team pushed through the night, securing a restraining order requiring Mason to stay at least 1,000 feet away from Harper. Violation would mean immediate arrest. Meanwhile, Juliet tripled the security detail. Were stationed in the lobby, the hallways, and even discreetly on the street. Sebastian did his best to maintain a sense of normalcy for Harper's sake. He encouraged her to keep up with her daily routine, if she felt able, meeting Kayla for lunch, working on branding projects. But no matter where she went, 2 plainclothes officers from a private security agency followed closely behind. It felt suffocating at times, but Harper admitted it was better than living paralyzed by fear. Despite the added precautions, her nightmares intensified. She would wake at odd hours, drenched in sweat, trembling from visions of Mason's twisted grin. Sebastian would stroke her hair, whisper soothing words, and remind her that she was safe, that no one would hurt her again. Some nights, she curled into his arms, tears slipping silently down her cheeks as the ghost of her ex-husband's control clawed at her memory. One evening, in an attempt to revive some romance, Sebastian prepared a quiet candlelit dinner in the penthouse. For a moment, Harper let herself feel at ease. Then her phone buzzed. She checked the screen, another unknown number. Her heart clenched as she read the message. "Your fancy husband can't save you forever. Watch your back." The phone fell from her hands. Color drained from her face. Furious, Sebastian picked it up. "I'll handle this," he said, voice tight with rage. He immediately forwarded it to Juliet, who began tracing the number. But it was another burner, untraceable. Still, it confirmed one thing. Mason hadn't disappeared. He was watching, waiting. The moment shattered their brief reprieve, leaving them both rattled. As a protective measure, Sebastian decided to accelerate a long-standing plan. Months ago, he'd purchased a multi-million-dollar townhouse in a hyper-secure gated community tucked into the Hollywood Hills. Originally, it was meant to be renovated into a family-friendly estate before the baby arrived. Now, he fast-tracked everything, determined to build a fortress Mason couldn't breach. While the penthouse was secure, it was still too visible. The new house would offer seclusion, silence, and seamless security built right into the walls. But Harper wasn't entirely convinced that relocating again would solve everything. She respected Sebastian's decisiveness, but one question lingered. Would Mason truly stop just because they hid behind gates and cameras, or would that isolation only feed his obsession? In a quiet moment, Kayla voiced a similar concern. These men, they don't always vanish just because you build walls, she said carefully. Sometimes you have to confront them, legally, maybe even directly. Harper shuddered at the idea. Seeing Mason face to face, she didn't know if she could handle the flood of trauma that would surface. Meanwhile, his psychological warfare only escalated. One afternoon, a masked courier delivered a package to Montgomery Tower. Inside was a broken baby doll, its arms violently snapped off. Tucked beside it was a note, scrawled in sharp ink. "Your time is running out." The entire office went on high alert. Harper's stomach twisted with nausea. The message was unmistakable. Sebastian, incensed, demanded a direct meeting with the LAPD's police commissioner, urging stronger intervention and faster enforcement. But even then, official channels moved sluggishly. At best, the authorities could offer the restraining order, which might or might not deter a man as relentless as Mason. Frustration simmered in Sebastian. He was a man accustomed to solving problems, buying out threats, negotiating mergers, navigating power plays. But Mason wasn't a business rival. He wasn't someone who could be silenced with a contract or outmaneuvered in a boardroom. He was unstable, dangerous, and obsessed. Uncertainty churned inside Harper. Part of her wanted to disappear, stay hidden, let the fortress around her shield everything. But another part, fierce and growing, urged her to confront him. She was carrying a child, new life. She refused to let Mason stain it with fear. Without telling Sebastian, she made a quiet decision. If Mason truly wanted a confrontation, she would find a way to end it, but on her terms. She didn't intend to be reckless. She wanted closure. But the longer she stayed silent, the more power Mason held. He thrived on her fear, fed on her silence. During a quiet coffee date with Kayla, Harper finally voiced her plan. She wanted to arrange a controlled meeting with Mason, under tight police surveillance. Kayla nearly choked on her latte. "Are you insane?" she hissed, her eyes wide with alarm. "You want to meet that psycho face to face?" Harper gently rested a hand over her growing belly. "I'm tired of running, Kayla. He's haunted me for years. If I can prove I'm not afraid of him anymore, maybe he'll finally back off." Kayla shook her head, dismayed. Confronting a stalker rarely ends well, especially one with a history of violence. "And you're pregnant, for God's sake." She leaned in, her voice lower. "Talk to Sebastian. He'll know a better way." But Harper was torn. Sebastian, protective by nature, would never agree to such a high-risk plan. His entire philosophy revolved around fortress-like protection. He wouldn't understand that this wasn't just about security, it was about regaining control. Each day, as her pregnancy advanced, the tension in her chest swelled. She longed for peace before the baby came. A fresh start, untainted by Mason's looming shadow. Then, a potential opening appeared. Detective Daniel Reyes returned with news. Mason had been spotted on a security camera near Union Station, heading out of the city. Possibly, he was lying low. Detective Reyes warned Harper not to take the sighting as a sign the danger had passed. Mason could return at any moment. Harper asked if the police would consider setting a trap, using her as bait. Reyes frowned. "A sting operation? We typically don't go that far unless we have probable cause of imminent danger. Right now, we only have harassment. Disturbing, yes, but not enough for that level of escalation." Harper's frustration boiled. Mason was clearly intensifying his threats, with grotesque dolls, ominous letters, veiled messages. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was fury. A sense of helplessness laced with rage, knowing that the system wasn't built to stop men like Mason until it was too late. And yet law enforcement kept asking for more. What would it take? For him to physically hurt her? Or worse, her unborn child? As the days dragged on, Sebastian noticed the restlessness in Harper. One night, after watching her pace the living room in silence, he gently approached her. "You're not telling me everything," he said quietly. "I can see it in your eyes. Let me in, please." Tears gathered at her lashes. She murmured the thoughts that had been circling her mind for weeks, how she wanted to break free from the cycle of fear. That maybe, just maybe, a direct confrontation would make Mason realize he no longer had power over her. She spoke with a tremor in her voice, but her spine was steel. "I need this," she whispered. "For me, for our child." Sebastian turned pale, He cupped her face in his hands. I understand wanting to stand up for yourself, he said. But it's too dangerous. I can't risk losing you or our baby. There was a crack in his voice, a break in the armor of the man who always had control. His fear was raw, and it made her heart ache. Harper felt torn. Sebastian's concern was deeply genuine, and yet her own need for resolution had begun to override everything else. In the end, she gave him her word. She wouldn't act recklessly. But privately, she continued her planning. If Mason wanted to confront her, then she'd choose the time, place, and terms. No more hiding. No more reacting. This time she would set the rules. She started envisioning a public, controlled space. Somewhere the police could intervene if things escalated. Somewhere she could face him as a woman who wasn't afraid anymore. Behind the scenes, Kayla urged her to reconsider. Please don't go rogue with this, she said, voice heavy with worry. Detective Reyes was more blunt. We advise against provoking him. He's unstable, unpredictable. But Harper's determination only grew stronger with each anonymous message, each note laced with malice. She refused to be a passive victim, not anymore. Though fear still curled in her stomach, it was matched, no exceeded, by a mother's protective rage. If Mason thought her pregnancy made her vulnerable, he was about to discover the opposite. She wasn't just protecting herself, she was protecting the future she was building. And no one, not even Mason, would rob her of that. She would do whatever it took to ensure her child entered a world free from Mason's twisted control. 2 weeks later, her chance arrived. Another letter. This one included a tattered photo from their wedding day. Across it, scribbled in red ink, "Time's up." Harper stared at the image, then turned it over and scrawled a short cryptic response. "Let's talk. Name the place, or I will." She sealed the note in a self-addressed envelope and dropped it in a random mailbox downtown, trusting her gut that Mason was monitoring her mail, always had been. When Kayla found out, she was furious. Harper had no idea if Mason would respond, but she had a plan, and it all began with a very public, very deliberate appearance. She had chosen the gala as her battlefield, not with violence, but with elegance and power. 3 weeks later, the exclusive Hope for Humanity Gala filled the Grand Metropolitan Hall with diamond lights, clinking glasses, and carefully curated appearances. Mason was there, of course, arm wrapped around Allegra, radiant in a custom emerald gown, basking in the cameras like she'd already won. Their entrance was rehearsed. Strategic. Cold. Whispers followed them like shadows. She used to be the assistant, right? Isn't his wife pregnant? No way she'd show up after what happened. They were wrong. In the swirl of press flashes and designer perfume, the doors opened again, and the energy in the room shifted instantly. Standing tall, poised, and breathtaking in a black velvet gown that hugged her growing belly, Harper walked in. But she wasn't alone. At her side was Leon Chandler, CEO of Arkstone Ventures, Mason's direct business rival. Calm. Charismatic, unshakably powerful, his hand rested lightly at Harper's lower back as if protecting her. As if she mattered. Gasps followed, then silence, then chaos. The photographers froze, the flashbulbs shifted, Mason turned, and for the first time all night, he looked unsure. Harper didn't flinch. She held his stare, lifted her chin slightly, then turned to greet the CEO of the venue board like she belonged there, because she did. Allegra's smile faltered. Leon leaned in, his voice low but perfectly timed. "This night is yours now." Mason stood frozen, one hand still loosely clutching Allegra's waist, but the mask of control was gone. Harper didn't even glance at them again. She and Leon moved through the crowd like a storm wrapped in elegance, pausing to greet senators, investors, a tech mogul or two. Every handshake Harper made sent a message. She wasn't the victim anymore. From the shadows, Mason watched as Harper laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Allegra leaned in. "She brought him here just to provoke you." Mason didn't respond. His jaw tightened. His grip on his glass cracked slightly. Nearby, a board member from Mason's firm whispered to another, "I heard Leon Chandler just signed a deal with their biggest investor. If that's true, Mason's about to lose everything." And that's when Mason realized this wasn't just a dramatic entrance. It was a strategic move, a warning. Back near the main stage, Leon handed Harper a flute of sparkling water. She clinked glasses with him, gaze locked. "To new beginnings," she said. Flashbulbs went off. The crowd shifted, and Mason Hale finally felt what it was like to be irrelevant. Backstage at the gala, Harper finally let out the breath she'd been holding all evening. "You did it," Leon said quietly. "You walked in there and burned the whole room down with grace." She smiled, but her hands trembled as she accepted a chair and let herself sink into it. The weight of the past few months pressed against her spine. For a moment, she stared down at her hands, the same ones that used to shake while texting Mason, wondering if she'd said something wrong. The same hands that used to fix her makeup after crying in silence. Now those hands had just clasped deals, greeted senators, and held her head high. "I didn't want to be dramatic," she said, "but I needed him to see." Leon knelt in front of her, gently adjusting the hem of her dress. "You didn't need to be dramatic," he said. "You just needed to remind them all who you are and who you've always been." Harper blinked quickly, trying to stop the sudden sting in her eyes. "This was never about revenge," she whispered. "It was about reminding myself that I'm not the girl he walked all over anymore. And tonight, I think I finally believed that." From the private lounge window, she could still see Mason standing stiffly at the edge of the ballroom. Allegra was talking, but his eyes never left the door where Harper had exited. Too late. Too much damage. Too far gone. Leon reached for her hand, his thumb brushing the edge of her wedding ring, the one she'd stopped wearing weeks ago. "You ready to go?" he asked. Harper nodded. She stood slowly, one hand protectively resting over her stomach. As she walked, she looked over her shoulder, not at Mason, but at the version of herself who used to stand in that very room, smiling through betrayal. That girl was gone now. As they left through the side exit, the chill of the night air hit her face. It felt like freedom. Behind her, the music played on. But that life, that world, wasn't hers anymore. Back at the penthouse, Mason slammed the crystal tumbler onto the bar, shards flying across the marble counter. Allegra flinched. She brought Leon Chandler to that event on purpose. "She made a fool of you, Mason," she added, bitterness curling her voice, and everyone saw it. Mason's voice was low, dangerous. "Don't pretend like you care who saw what. This was never about her." Allegra's expression hardened. "She upstaged me, at my event, while pregnant." She threw her clutch onto the couch, lip trembling, not from fear but fury. "She used to walk 2 steps behind you. Now she walks beside a man 10 times more powerful than you ever were." Silence fell between them. Mason poured another drink, hand shaking, but he couldn't bring himself to take a sip. The ice clinked inside the glass, but the burn he once craved felt meaningless. Instead, he walked to the window, staring out at the cityscape that used to make him feel invincible. Tonight, it just felt empty. His voice came like a ghost. "I didn't think she'd really leave." Allegra scoffed. "She didn't just leave. She erased you." His phone buzzed. He grabbed it, expecting some late-night sympathy from a board member, or an investor trying to smooth over the embarrassment. But it wasn't that. It was a press headline, already trending. "Pregnant Harper Hale debuts stunning appearance with Arcstone CEO Leon Chandler. Mason's empire shaken." Beneath it, a photo of Harper, radiant, fearless, walking into the gala with Leon at her side. Her hand resting lightly on her belly, his hand resting firmly at her back. Mason stared at the screen. In her eyes, he saw nothing of the woman who used to wait for him at home. No anger, no heartbreak, just peace. And for the first time, he realized he hadn't lost control. He'd never had it. 2 days after the gala, Harper's name trended across every major outlet. Paparazzi photos, business columns, social media reels, all captured the moment. A pregnant woman, glowing in velvet, standing beside one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. The headline that stunned Mason most read, "She didn't just move on, she leveled up." Mason's team scrambled to spin it, call it a coincidence, a PR stunt, a power play. But no one was buying it, so he did the only thing he thought he had left. He showed up. At Harper's new apartment in the Upper East Side, where sunlight pooled across marble floors and peace finally lived in the silence. She opened the door halfway, belly round beneath a soft cashmere sweater, her eyes calm, unreachable. "Mason," she said, voice flat but polite. "I just want to talk," he said. "Alone, please." She looked at him for a long moment, then stepped aside, not to let him in, but to reveal Leon sitting inside, cradling a coffee mug and reviewing documents by the fireplace. "No need," Harper replied. "Anything you need to say can be sent to my lawyer or my publicist." Mason's face paled. "You're really doing this?" Harper stepped forward, her voice low but absolute. You made your choices. I made mine. The difference is, mine brought peace. Behind her, Leon stood up. He didn't need to say anything. His presence alone spoke of power, safety, and unwavering support. Mason's eyes flicked to Harper's stomach, then back to her face. You're still my? No, she cut in, sharp but calm. I was your wife, I was your partner, and you threw it all away for a spotlight that never loved you back. She took one final look at the man she used to love, the man who thought she'd always wait. Then she closed the door. Click. Outside, Mason stood frozen. And for the first time in his life, there was no power, no name, no money that could fix what he had broken. The hospital room was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of morning light as Harper lay back against the pillows, exhausted but at peace. Beside her, Leon held their newborn son. Tiny, warm, and full of life. His little fists waved gently in the air, his face still pink from the world he had just entered. Harper turned her head to look at them, eyes filled with tears she wasn't afraid to let fall anymore. You did it, Leon whispered, still staring in awe at the baby. He's perfect. Harper gave a soft laugh, then winced at the ache in her body. No, we did it. You never let me go through this alone. She looked down at her son, already swaddled in a pale blue blanket. His nose reminded her of her mother. His mouth, well, maybe hers. But those tiny sea-glass eyes? They were looking at the world like it owed him nothing, and he owed it nothing back. Just like his mom. Leon leaned over and kissed her temple. Have you thought about a name? Harper hesitated, then nodded. Julian, Leon smiled. Julian Chandler, strong name. No, Harper said softly. Julian Hale. He deserves his own name, his own legacy, but not the one his father left behind. A new one. Leon didn't argue. He just nodded, with respect, not pity. There was a knock on the door, and moments later, Juliet and Kayla entered, arms full of balloons, flowers, and what looked enough snacks to feed the entire maternity ward. Holy crap, you made a whole human. Kayla grinned, wiping her eyes with one hand and holding out a Starbucks with the other. And we brought caffeine. Juliet walked straight to Harper, cupping her face like a proud older sister. You're glowing, and not just post-birth. You're glowing with peace. Harper looked around the room, at her friends, her son, the man who never left, and the quiet hum of a life that no longer needed approval to feel worthy. It was soft. It was slow. It was everything Mason's world had never been. She looked down at Julian again, brushing a fingertip against his cheek. You're safe now, she whispered. And so am I. The ache intensified, coming in waves. Kayla, who had dropped by to help set up the nursery, noticed Harper's tight expression and insisted they start timing the contractions. They were alarmingly consistent. Sebastian, in the middle of a staff meeting, rushed back the moment Kayla called. He found Harper pacing the living room, breathing through the pain, one hand on her belly. Concern furrowed his brow. We need to get you to the hospital, he said, gently but firmly. Harper nodded, adrenaline rushing through her veins. She was nearly 3 weeks early, but Dr. Lowry had warned the baby might come ahead of schedule. Juliet Cross swiftly coordinated their departure, ensuring Harper's security detail flanked them from building to vehicle. Brief flickers of fear, of Mason, of the past, passed through Harper's mind, but Kayla softly reminded her, He's behind bars, Harper. This is about you and your baby now. The only thing that mattered was a safe delivery. At Riverside Hospital's private maternity wing, the medical team prepped Harper immediately. Dr. Lowry arrived within minutes, connecting her to monitors. The baby's heartbeat echoed strong and steady across the room. But the contractions were growing more intense. Harper gripped Sebastian's hand, sweat glistening across her forehead. Each wave of pain felt like a reflection of the strength she had built over the past year. In her mind, she repeated a simple mantra. This is for us, for our future. Hours passed in a blur of breathing techniques, calm reassurances, and hushed focus. Kayla waited just outside, sending updates to close friends and family. Juliet stationed herself at the end of the hallway, ensuring no journalists or uninvited eyes disturbed the Montgomery family's privacy. Through it all, Sebastian never left Harper's side. He stroked her hair, whispered encouragement, and tried to hide the panic behind his eyes. Finally, near midnight, it was time. Harper was moved into the delivery room. Her pulse quickened, Sweat beaded across her brow. A contraction tore through her, and she cried out, clutching Sebastian's arm with every ounce of strength. The medical staff surrounded her, voices calm but urgent. Push, breathe, push. Harper bore down, every fiber of her being focused on bringing this new life into the world. Tears streamed down her cheeks from the sheer intensity. Pain blurred her vision, but Sebastian's voice grounded her. You can do this. I'm right here. I love you. Then it happened. A piercing infant cry split the room. The baby emerged into Dr. Lowry's waiting hands, tiny lungs howling with life. Harper collapsed back against the bed, sobbing with relief and awe. She caught a glimpse of the small, wriggling body, red and perfect. Pure wonder filled the room. The staff suctioned the baby's airways, checked vitals, and then gently placed the child onto Harper's chest. Warmth flooded Harper's chest as she felt that tiny heartbeat pulsing gently against hers. It's a girl, Dr. Lowry declared, her voice glowing with pride. Emotion overwhelmed Harper. Tears streamed down her cheeks as Sebastian leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to their daughter's forehead. She's perfect, he whispered, just like her mother. They named her Amelia Rose Montgomery. The next hour passed in a haze of pure bliss. Caleb burst into the room, teary-eyed, hugging them carefully. Juliet texted the rest of the Montgomery team, who immediately erupted in a flurry of congratulatory messages. Amelia's first day on Earth was blanketed in love. The shadow of Mason's terror had been replaced by the bright light of new life. Lying in her hospital bed, Harper cradled Amelia against her chest and felt a deep sense of completeness. She had weathered trauma and heartbreak, but every painful chapter had led her here. To love, to peace, to a future unchained from fear. Sebastian placed his hand over Amelia's tiny fingers, his voice tight with emotion. We're a family now, he said. No one can take that from us. The next few days at the hospital passed in a whirlwind of checkups, interrupted sleep, and sacred, quiet moments. Amelia Rose Montgomery proved to have a strong set of lungs, letting out cries that demanded immediate attention. Harper, adjusting to postpartum exhaustion, leaned into Sebastian's steady presence. He surprised her with how quickly he mastered diaper changes and feeding routines, grinning as he joked, "If I can negotiate billion-dollar acquisitions, I can figure out a diaper." Word spread quickly across Montgomery Global that their CEO's daughter had arrived. Soon, gifts poured in, embroidered blankets, handcrafted silver rattles, even charitable donations made in Amelia's name to local children's hospitals. Harper was touched. She thought back to the lonely, uncertain days of her first marriage, when she had no one. Now she was surrounded by warmth, support, and unwavering care. The day before their hospital discharge, Kayla arrived with a small box wrapped in satin ribbon. Inside was a delicate necklace, a fine chain with a single rose pendant. For Amelia, Kayla said softly, a reminder that even from hardship, something beautiful can bloom. Tears welled in Harper's eyes as she accepted the gift, the symbolism wrapping around her heart like a promise. That same afternoon, Detective Reyes phoned Sebastian with an update. Mason remained behind bars, and the case was moving steadily toward a plea deal. A deal. Detective Reyes assured them that if convicted, Mason would serve his time under close supervision. The legal details mattered less than the finality of it. Mason wouldn't be a threat any longer. Harper exhaled. The breath came out shaky, uneven, like it had been trapped in her chest for far too long. It felt like a breath she'd been holding for years, the last remnants of fear dissolving into nothingness. Finally, it was time to bring Amelia home. The staff had transformed the new townhouse's entryway into a quiet celebration. Soft lights, pastel balloons, and a hand-painted sign that read, "Welcome home, baby Montgomery." Even the scent of fresh flowers made Harper tear up. It was the first time her child crossed a threshold that wasn't shadowed by trauma. The sight overwhelmed Harper with emotion. She kissed Sebastian, deeply grateful. It hadn't been long since she believed happiness was out of reach. And now, it was hanging from the ceiling in paper butterflies and twinkling lights. Motherhood proved both exhilarating and exhausting. Amelia's cries pierced the night, but Harper embraced every moment, every late-night feeding, every sleepy gaze into her daughter's perfect face. She often found herself imagining Amelia's future. Dance recitals, bedtime stories, unconditional love woven through every season of childhood. She would give this little girl everything she never had: safety, stability, and a mother who didn't flinch at shadows. She vowed Amelia would grow up learning courage and compassion, never shadowed by the darkness Harper had once lived through. Sebastian adapted seamlessly to fatherhood. Board meetings were rescheduled around nap times. Video calls happened with a baby monitor perched beside his laptop. The global expansion of Montgomery Ventures slowed slightly, but as he told Harper one afternoon, "What's the point of success if I can't enjoy my family?" Harper's heart melted. She had a man who valued fatherhood as deeply as fortune. Watching him cradle Amelia, singing softly off-key, made her fall in love all over again. Late one evening, after Amelia finally drifted off in her crib, Harper and Sebastian curled up on the love seat in the nursery. Moonlight bathed the room in soft silver, the hush of newborn peace wrapped around them. Outside, the city buzzed on, but inside these walls, time stilled. Harper rested her head on Sebastian's shoulder and whispered, "If someone told me a year ago I'd feel this kind of peace, I wouldn't have believed them." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the fragile beauty of believing in something again. He stroked her hair, voice low and full of love. "You deserve it all, and if anything ever threatens this again, we'll face it together." She believed him completely. They had survived Mason's storm. They had forged a love that was steady, fierce, and unbreakable. With Amelia's presence, their story felt whole, yet still brimming with future chapters. And for Harper, the truest triumph lay not in Mason's capture, but in the way her deepest fears had been outshone by something brighter: hope. Months passed gently. Each day brought new milestones: Amelia's first coups, the thrill of her rolling over, proud applause from her parents. The house hummed with quiet joy. Love echoed in every hallway. Every sound now meant life, not fear. Every silence was peaceful, not haunted. What once had been a fortress of protection had become a home. Shielded from Los Angeles noise and chaos, the Montgomery home became a sanctuary of peace. Mason's sentencing came swiftly. The judge handed down a multi-year prison term, citing his repeated violations of the restraining order and his escalating acts of violence. A quiet hush fell over the courtroom. Harper didn't attend, but when she heard the news, a wave of relief surged through her. It was closure, clean, undeniable. She no longer needed to scan the shadows, no longer feared cryptic messages or sudden reappearances. The specter was gone. Still, a piece of her heart wrestled with sorrow. She had once loved Mason. Seeing him descend into obsession and darkness had left a dull ache, but motherhood had clarified her path. Safeguarding her peace and her child's future meant letting the past remain where it belonged, behind bars. Meanwhile, Kayla stepped into a vibrant new chapter of her life. She landed a prestigious marketing position with a boutique consultancy, found a cozy apartment in Silver Lake, and started dating a thoughtful journalist named Daniel Reyes. She often dropped by for Sunday brunch, doting on her goddaughter Amelia, playfully sparring with Sebastian about philanthropy, and catching Harper up on the latest downtown gossip. Sebastian, too, had blossomed into fatherhood. He still oversaw Montgomery Global, but he delegated more. He traveled less. The board respected his rebalanced priorities, and profits soared anyway, as if the joy at home had fine-tuned his instincts at work. He and Harper launched a philanthropic fund, supporting women fleeing domestic abuse. In private, Harper admitted it was rooted in her own journey. She wanted to be the hand reaching back, to offer the lifeline she never had. Life's pace slowed into something richly fulfilling. Yes, the city still roared beyond the gates. Yes, the world still demanded ambition, but Harper found profound joy in the small moments. Reading bedtime stories to Amelia beneath a starry nightlight, sipping tea with Sebastian in the soft hush after their daughter fell asleep. Each day reaffirmed what she'd come to believe. True wealth wasn't measured in dollars or deals. It lived in the arms that held you without condition. The only trace of Mason that remained were the occasional dreams, flickers of fear that surfaced in sleep. Harper would wake breathless, haunted by echoes of the warehouse or the sound of his voice on the phone. But then she'd feel Sebastian's steady hand on hers, his warmth coaxing her back to the present. And each morning, when Amelia's bright eyes met hers in the early dawn light, the nightmares faded a little more. On a crisp autumn afternoon, the three of them strolled through Griffith Park. A breeze stirred the air, scattering golden leaves and carrying the laughter of nearby children. Harper, pushing Amelia's stroller, felt a wave of quiet gratitude. She had come so far, from a frightened woman walking away from her past to a mother walking boldly toward the future. She had found not just refuge in the arms of a billionaire, but real love, real partnership. By the lakeside in the late afternoon sun, Sebastian slid an arm around Harper's waist. She leaned into him, pressing a soft kiss to his shoulder. In her arms, Amelia gurgled contentedly, reaching into the crisp breeze. They stared at the horizon, at a life rebuilt from the ashes of fear. A life now rooted in mutual respect, resilience, and unwavering devotion. Their story was proof that even in a world brimming with ambition, noise, and hidden danger, a safe harbor could still be found. For Harper, the final echoes of Mason's harassment had faded completely, replaced by the bright, living melody of a family writing its own story. A story filled with warmth, laughter, and a bond no threat could fracture. On Amelia's first birthday, their home was alive with celebration. Friends and family gathered in the courtyard, decorated in soft pastels and whimsical balloon arches. Kayla oversaw party games with practiced flair, while Daniel snapped candid photos for a lifestyle feature he was writing. Juliet, no longer security, now attended as a close friend, though she still scanned the grounds every so often, out of habit. Laughter floated through the air, blending with the sweet scent of vanilla cake. Harper, glowing in a floral dress, gently guided Amelia's chubby fingers as the toddler took shaky steps across the grass. It felt surreal, almost like watching someone else's life. Just a year ago, fear ruled her world. Now, every step her daughter took was a step into a future unburdened by shadows. Sebastian raised a glass of sparkling cider for a toast. He cleared his throat, his eyes sweeping across the smiling faces. "A year ago, we found ourselves in darkness," he began. "But look how far we've come. Amelia is our light, our joy. But none of this would be possible without Harper. Her strength carried us through. Today, I celebrate not just our daughter, but the woman who taught me the meaning of courage. May we always stand together, in love and in safety." Applause rang out. Harper's eyes shimmered as she mouthed thank you to him. Her heart swelled as she remembered the nights when she doubted she'd ever feel safe again, when Mason's shadow felt permanent, when she questioned if she even deserved this kind of life. But now she held her daughter's hand, and beside her stood a man who had loved her through the storm. After the party, when the guests had left and the courtyard lights dimmed, Harper wandered upstairs. She found Sebastian in the nursery, gently rocking a sleepy Amelia. The soft glow of the lamp bathed his face in warmth as he hummed a lullaby, his expression filled with peace. Harper leaned on the doorframe, tears in her eyes, not from sorrow, but from fullness. This was the man who had fought for her. This was the life they had built. And in that room, where love reigned and fear had no place, she finally completely knew she was home. She had become a woman who found space to fight for herself. A woman who never let privilege overshadow love. No longer surviving, but living. No longer hiding, but standing tall. After gently tucking Amelia into bed, Harper and Sebastian slipped quietly into the living room. Harper curled up on the couch, her head resting on his shoulder. The weight of the day eased off her shoulders the moment she felt his heartbeat steady against her cheek. They spoke in soft murmurs about the future. Maybe a sibling for Amelia someday. The expansion of their women's shelter initiative. Perhaps even a sabbatical, to travel the world as a family once their daughter was older. For the first time in forever, the future didn't feel like a gamble. It felt like a gift. The house was peaceful, the night free of fear. Before they climbed the grand staircase to their bedroom, Harper paused by the large window that overlooked the garden. Moonlight blanketed the hedges in silver. The same garden that once looked like a fortress now shimmered like freedom. She stood still, letting the moment breathe. In the glass she caught the faintest reflection of her younger self, the woman who once trembled in silence, uncertain she'd ever find safety again. Harper offered her past self a sad but grateful smile. That version of her had fought like hell to survive, and tonight she got to witness peace. And then, without regret, she whispered goodbye. Turning to Sebastian, she slipped her fingers into his. "I'm happy," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. He pulled her close, brushing a kiss across her forehead. "So am I," he whispered. Because no matter what storms come, we've already proven we can weather them, together. His voice cracked, not from fear this time, but from reverence. For her, for all they'd built. Their footsteps vanished up the stairs, hand in hand, leaving behind echoes of a story once forged in heartbreak, now rewritten in hope. The Montgomerys' future shimmered ahead, proof that love, fortified by courage, can banish even the fiercest ghosts. Because love didn't just heal, it rebuilt, stronger, safer, whole. Harper's journey, from a fearful wife fleeing torment to a deeply cherished partner and mother in a safe, loving home, reminds us all. Real strength often comes dressed in quiet vulnerability, quiet bravery, and an unwillingness to give up. She faced menace and intimidation, and discovered she never had to face it alone. A loyal husband, devoted friends, a fierce maternal instinct, all stood guard beside her. Even when her past threatened everything, love triumphed. And what followed was a life bright with promise. For Harper, for Sebastian, and for their daughter Amelia. A life no longer overshadowed by fear, but illuminated by choice. If you found Harper's story gripping and inspiring, please like this video, share it with someone who might need hope, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful, real-life inspired narratives. Thank you for walking with us through this emotional journey. Your time, your heart, your presence, it means the world. Your support helps us continue to craft stories that celebrate resilience, love, and the unbreakable human spirit. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and never stop believing in the power of a new beginning.